Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Tuesday. I hope you all are doing really well. We're going to sit down and talk about Marcel Brands today. Typically after any transfer window, whether it be January, whether it be the summer, usually, the topic of conversation on the majority of Evertonians' lips after the transfer window is Marcel Brands. Is he doing a good job? Has he succeeded in the transfer window? Did we, get everybody in that we needed to get in? Did we, get rid of the players we needed to get rid of? Has Marcel Brands done what we expected him to do this summer? And we're not just going to talk about this summer, in itself. We're going to talk about Marcel Brands' whole time at Everton briefly. We've spoken about Marcel Brands on a number of occasions before because this conversation often comes up, amongst Evertonians. Is Marcel Brands doing a good enough job? Is Marcel Brands succeeding as director of football at Everton Football Club? Is he wasting money? Is he, bringing in the players that we need him to bring in? Is he identifying the key areas on the pitch we need to improve on and improving on those areas? And like I said, Marcel Brands, I feel, is a man who is spoken about more than any other really at Everton Football Club because there's a lot of pressure on Marcel Brands' shoulder. Obviously, he took over from Steve Walsh, who we knew was absolutely shocking at his job, and him and Ronald Koeman very much put Everton in a situation which I feel personally like we still haven't fully recovered from in regard to the amount of money that we spend in such a short period of time. And again, financial fair play obviously this summer massively caught up on us, and that is because of countless years of wasting silly amounts of money on players that just either simply aren't good enough or don't fit into the system. And a lot of that was down to, the previous regime under Ronald Koeman and Steve Walsh. But Marcel Brands has been at Everton now for 3 years, signed a 3-year contract in Marco Silva's first season, of course, 2018-19 summer, I believe. And he has recently signed a 3-year contract extension. We know obviously not long into his time at Everton Football Club, actually, he was made a member of the board, so he is official. He's a board member. I think he's actually down on Companies House. If you don't know what Companies House is, it's a website you can go on in the UK, and you can basically pick any sort of company up that's registered, and you can have a look at their office and their directors and their senior management staff, if you like. And Marcel Brands is actually down on Companies House as a director of Everton Football Club, which is a little bit mad really, considering he's only been here a couple of years, and his job isn't to be a director of Everton Football Club. His job is to be the director of football, which I suppose it's in the name, but it's not so much about anything else at the football club. It's just about the footballing side of things. Which is interesting really, because again, like I said, he was made a member of the board fairly quickly into his time at Everton Football Club, a year or so in. Obviously we had that summer where we brought in Richarlison, Luca Dean, very good summer, very positive summer. Yerry Mina, Andre Gomez come in on loan, of course. Bernard come in, and everything was looking on the up. Since then, again, as I said, there's been ups, there's been downs, and we're going to talk about them all in today's live stream. But I suppose the overall question is, 3 years into Marcel Brands' time at Everton, is he doing a good job at the football club? He signed a new 3-year contract, as I said, so technically he is halfway through his time at Everton, and 3 years into a project, whether it be a 4, 5, 6 year project, we should really start to be seeing the positive impact that Marcel Brands is having on the football club now, because like I said, we're halfway in, and I understand that there was a lot of dead wood to filter through, if you like, in regards to the playing staff. I understand there was probably a lot of things going on at the club that needed to be sorted and needed to be fixed, and that was all down to Marcel Brands when he come into the club, and it was all down to Marcel Brands to sort that out and to get that fixed. We're going to talk about the academy today. We're going to talk about players' contracts, wages, length of contracts, etc, and obviously incomings and outgoings as well. But we'll briefly start by talking about this transfer window, the transfer window just gone, because obviously the big glaring omission to this transfer window that Everton desperately needed was a right back. We spoke about that a couple of days ago when we done the transfer window review. We spoke about the fact that we still haven't signed a right back, and a right back wasn't just an issue for this summer either, by the way, and this is a big criticism of Marcel Brands, and a big criticism that I have of Marcel Brands is, it's not like this is the first year that we were desperately looking at a right back. We knew we needed a right back. We've known we've needed a right back now for 2, maybe even 3 summers. I said it yesterday, okay, a couple of seasons ago, Seamus Coleman might have been still able to, to play the majority of Premier League games and do it at a good level. But we knew arguably even 4 years ago after he picked up that bad injury, that the time, Seamus Coleman's time as a first team, player in Everton squad was coming to an end, or certainly would be coming to an end very, very shortly. So even if we weren't in the transfer market 3 or 4 years ago to go and buy a replacement for Seamus Coleman straight away, we should have been of the knowledge that it's going to come to a point here where in a year, 2 years' time, we're needing to replace Seamus. And what really sort of confuses me is Marcel Brands got this nailed on with Leighton Baines when he come into the football club. In his first summer, Marcel Brands identified that, okay, Leighton Baines is still got something to offer to the club, still got something to offer to the side. Again, he's quality in terms of technically, but in terms of his ability to get up and down the pitch constantly for 90 minutes and to do that week in, week out, that's just not there anymore due to his age, due to fitness issues, due to stamina issues. And Marcel Brands identified that straight away and went out and brought in Luca Dean, the perfect replacement for Leighton Baines. We all sat here a few years ago before Luca Dean come in and spoke about how difficult it would be to replace Leighton Baines. I remember having a conversation with my dad and a couple of my friends just before Luca Dean come in and thinking, how do we replace one of the best left backs to ever play in the Premier League, arguably the best left back to ever play for Everton. I know some people would have their arguments there, but certainly a player who very much at one point seemed irreplaceable. How do you bring in somebody that replaces that quality of Leighton Baines going forward, but also can put in solid defensive performances as Leighton was? And Marcel almost come in straight away and was like, bang, I've got Luca Dean here from Barcelona, £18 million, which, like I said, at that point, Farhad Moshiri obviously had been at the club for a couple of years. We'd gone through the Koeman and Walsh years of just blasting money up the wall because they had it for no reason whatsoever, and we went in and bought a fantastic left back from Barcelona who come in and was like a carbon copy of Leighton Baines. It was like watching Leighton Baines 4 or 5 years ago, and then Leighton obviously spent a year, or a couple of years, just being again a backup, playing as and when sort of in the 2018-19 season. I think it was the 18-19 season, yeah. And then obviously in the 1920 season, I believe it was. That wasn't last year, was it? Yeah, 1920 season. He wasn't involved as much, and then obviously he retired at the end of the season. But that was exactly the type of approach that Everton needed with our left back situation. We brought in Luca Dean at a time when Leighton Baines was showing signs of, still got that ability, still got that quality, but probably not enough fitness or stamina to be able to do it for 38 games in a season. We brought in Luca Dean, he became the number one. Leighton Baines become a really, really solid number two. He'd done that for a couple of seasons, and then obviously through his choice he retired. If he hadn't have retired, I honestly think if he hadn't have if he hadn't have chosen to retire, he might have still been at Everton to this day, Leighton Baines, and I'd have had no issue with that, because you won't find many backup left backs that are as good and as experienced as Leighton Baines is. Look at his final season, his final goal for Everton. He rifled one in against Leicester with a couple of minutes to go in the FA Cup from about 35 yards into the park end. Absolute worldie of a goal. And like I said, this is what sort of confuses me, because within the first 6 months of Marcel Brands' time at Everton Football Club, he looked at left back and thought, right, this needs addressing. We need to bring in a number one left back so that our current number one can become the number two. And Marcel Brands has almost had 2-3 years to do that with the right back situation as well, but it seems to have just escaped him. You could argue that when Luca Dean come into the football club to replace Leighton Baines, you could argue we needed somebody to come in on the right hand side to replace Seamus Coleman as well. Okay, maybe give or take, Seamus maybe had a year or so on Leighton Baines in regards to how long he could carry on for. But he certainly didn't have 2, 3, 4 years on Leighton Baines. When you look back now, it's is it 4 seasons since Luca Dean come in, 3 seasons since Luca Dean come into the football club, and Seamus Coleman is still the number one right back, which is baffling, because like I said, Marcel Brands was so proactive with the left back situation. You would have thought and like to have hoped he'd have done the same with the right back situation. And it obviously come a point a couple of seasons ago when we identified that we needed to bring in a right back, because we brought in Djibril Sidibe from Monaco on loan. So that then was obviously the thought process of, right, okay, we need to replace Seamus Coleman. We need to go out and bring somebody in that can start week in, week out, and Seamus can be the backup. Now, unfortunately for Everton and Marcel Brands and whoever was involved in that decision, we brought in a right back in Jibril Sidibe who wasn't anywhere near as good as Seamus Coleman. So when Seamus was fit, he played every game anyway, and Sidibe ended up being the backup, which, again, you could say is a bad decision, was a bad signing, etc. You know, if you could look at it either way. You could look at it as a bad signing because he was meant to come in and be that sort of replacement for Seamus, or you could look at it as a decent signing because he come in and give us a little bit of backup and allowed John Joe Kenny to go out on loan. John Joe Kenny going out on loan to Schalke, for me, was the point in John Joe Kenny's career where Everton, Marcel Brands, the manager at the time, all decided whether or not John Joe Kenny was good enough to start games of football for Everton. He's since then come back. He's been on loan to Celtic since then as well. And he still isn't getting in the team over a 32, 33-year-old Seamus Coleman. So for me, it's clear John Joe Kenny isn't good enough to be Everton's right back going forward. So why are we still in a situation where we've gone through another summer transfer window, another 2-month transfer window, where we've known from the off we've needed a right back? We've known from the off we've been interested in a right back. Denzel Dumfries, Max Aarons, Ainsley Maitland-Niles. How many times have these players been linked over the last 3-4 months or so? Max Aarons was being linked 2-3 months before the transfer window had even opened. There was heavy links that Everton were happy to do a deal for Max Aarons. Fast forward until the end of the transfer window, and we still haven't managed to bring in a right back, and we're now relying on Seamus Coleman for the rest of the season to be fit and to be able to give 110% every week. Obviously, we sat down, we spoke yesterday about Seamus Coleman picking up an injury on international duty. The club confirmed late last night, that injury was a hamstring injury, and we know at Seamus Coleman's age, hamstring injuries can keep you out for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. It's anyone's guess. The club haven't informed us of how long Seamus will be out for or the extent of his injury, but we know that a hamstring injury isn't nice at that age. Alan picked up a hamstring injury towards the back end of last season and was out for 7-8 weeks, and then when he come back, he wasn't the same player because it's so difficult to get back into that flow of things. So is it now going to be the reliance on John Joe Kenny playing right back for the next 8-9 weeks? If so, is John Joe good enough to step up to the plate and do that? Or are we going to see sorry, it's a bit of a tickly chest. I haven't got what you think I've got. Or are we going to see a player shoehorned into that position, i.e. Mason Holgate, a centre-back playing right-back, Ben Godfrey, a centre-back playing right-back? Are we going to see a 5 at the back formation with Andros Townsend playing right wing-back, or Tom Davies playing there? Because let's be honest, I've seen a lot of people, when we spoke about the transfer window the other day, a lot of people saying, right back wasn't a priority because we've got John Joe Kenny there, we've got, you can play Mason Holgate there, Ben Godfrey, Tom Davies, Alex Iwobi. Well, out of all of those players mentioned there, only one of them is a natural right back, and if we're conceding that, we don't really think that one is good enough to be Everton's right back going forward, especially if we're wanting to challenge for European qualification and stuff like that. Then we're looking at players who aren't natural right backs being shoehorned into a position. And look, it worked last season for a period of time. We had Mason Holgate at right back, we had Ben Godfrey at left back. It worked last season, but the football we played during that time was very, very defensive. Very defensive, because Mason Holgate isn't going to get beyond the halfway line and lash in world-class ball after world-class ball into the box in the same ways that Ben Godfrey didn't do it. So Mason will be a decent right back defensively, but he's not going to give us what we need going forward. And that disrupts the balance of play, doesn't it? Because you've got Luca Dean belting down the left-hand side, throwing balls in, but you haven't got it on the right-hand side. It disrupts that balance, and that's where we get caught out by sides. So, again, as I've said, Marcel Brands in that department has failed this summer. He has failed, but I don't just think... And what's worrying for me is it's not just this summer that we've been needing of a right-back and that we haven't brought one in. We've obviously been targeting a right back, haven't we? Because Ainsley Maitland-Niles was desperate to come to Everton until he had one conversation with Mikel Arteta and decided that everything was okay. Denzel Dumfries we were heavily linked with until he went over to the Euros and turned into prime Maradona, and then obviously Everton weren't able to afford him. We were linked with Max Aarons for a while until it became quite evident that Norwich wanted a silly amount of money for Max Aarons. So it's quite clear that Everton wanted a right back. If Marcel Brands or Rafa Benitez or anybody at the club had come out, earlier on this summer and said, listen, we're not targeting a right back. We've got Seamus Coleman here who we believe for more often than not will be fit enough to perform and to perform at a good level. And we've got John Joe Kenny here who's a decent backup for him. We're not after a right back. Then we could all sit here and we could have our opinions and we could have our thoughts and we could disagree or we could agree, but we would understand the club's stance on the situation, so it wouldn't be a failure because the club's stance was never to go out and buy a right back. It was always to that we've got good enough right backs here, so we're not targeting a right back. So we'd be sitting here now saying, well, we're not happy with that stance, but it's not a failure because the club haven't failed in anything. Whereas we know the club were targeting a right back, we know the club were wanting to bring in somebody that can play in that position, and they haven't done that, so therefore that's a failure. But as I said, it's not just a failure for this summer, it's not just a failure for this gone transfer window. For me, it's a failure for the last 2-3 seasons. Why didn't we bring in a right back last summer when we spent £60 million? We brought in Alan, Decore, James, Ben Godfrey, all good signings, and again, no issue with any of them signings, but why, when we had that little bit more freedom with FFP, or we decided to just bollocks FFP and go over the line anyway, why wasn't one of those players a right back? If we knew we were going to be in this situation 12 months on, where we were going to be we were going to be very tight and we were only going to spend less than £1 million or less than £2 million, whatever, why wasn't one of those positions last summer to be, right, let's get a right back in right now, spend 30-40 million on one, and then we don't have to worry about that next season. As I said, if Marcel Brands had have identified this position and sorted this position out 3 or 4 years ago, we could have brought in a Max Aarons, who'd have only been 17, 18 at the time. But the point is, Seamus could have still played the next season, 2 seasons, and then by the time it was, time for Seamus to come out the squad, Max Aarons had been good enough and had enough experience and got, known the team and known the club and known everything good enough to step in and be that natural progressor. And that's my biggest issue with Everton, and that's my biggest issue with Marcel Brands, is that as much as he's, again, on one hand, he's bringing in some really good young talent. Nazem Kunku is a really good young player. Obviously, you've got Ben Godfrey, who's been exceptional, £20 million. Let's be honest, he wasn't a hidden gem. He cost us £20 million. So as good of a player Ben Godfrey is, as good of a defender Ben Godfrey is, it's not like we're sitting here saying, oh, Marcel's found a hidden gem there. He hasn't. He spent a lot of money on him. Jared Branthwaite, who's good, and I'm sure will be, one of our, starting centre-backs in a couple of years' time. However, there doesn't seem to be that natural progression in other areas. We should have had a right-back in by now. It's as simple as that. We've had 2-3 years of knowing that Seamus Coleman is coming towards the end of his time as a starting fullback in Everton's team, and yet we haven't addressed that. As I said yesterday, it seems very much like it's reactionary. It seems very much like it's being reactive rather than proactive, and by that I mean it's sort of, instead of 2 or 3 seasons ago looking at it and going, okay, Seamus might still be able to perform this season, he might be able to perform next season, but in 3 years' time the likelihood is Seamus Coleman's going to be coming towards the end of his time of being a consistent player at Everton. So we'll go in this summer and we'll bring in a young right back. We'll bring in somebody that can get his head down, work hard, maybe go out on loan a couple of times, work with Seamus, and then in 3 years' time we'll be ready to step in to into that right back position and replace Seamus Coleman. That would be proactiveness, because we'd be proactively looking at a solution before the problem has come up, but understanding that the problem will come up at some point. Whereas now we're looking at Everton and it's very much reactive, isn't it? Because the problem has now arisen and we're now going, shit, what do we do now? Where do we go? Who can we sign at right back? Who's available? Who can we bring in? Instead of already having that position and situation, sorted years ago, 2-3 years ago, when we knew we were going to be in this situation. So that for me is a failure of Marcel Brands and a failure of Everton's recruitment side, as the fact that we haven't managed to buy a right back, not just this summer, but for the last 2-3 years on the bounce, where we've been sitting here saying, it's gone to the point where last season we were saying, okay, we need 2 centre midfielders, we need a creative midfielder. We nailed all of those positions, but we were also saying we need a right back. It's gone from right back being our, 4th maybe on the list of positions we need to address, to 3rd maybe, to 2nd maybe, to this season top. Now, when it was 3rd or 4th on the list, we should have been going out and bringing in a right back. Not when it's top of the list. Because when it's top of the list and then you fail to go and bring one in, then it's a failure. And then that's when fans start to get annoyed, and that's when we all start to sit here and go, hang on, what's going on here? How haven't we still signed a right back? When it's fourth on the list and you fail to bring one in, it's like, yeah, well, we don't need one now. So we'd have liked one, but we don't need one now, so we'll go again next summer. And then you get one when it's third priority or when it's second priority. When you fail to bring a player in a position that you've, or that as a club, certainly as a fan base, we've prioritised as number one to go and bring in, a player in that position, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because that's when fans start to turn, and that's when fans start to get pretty annoyed at the director of football and at those in charge of the football club. And as I said, if Everton's stance was we weren't after a right back, we were happy with Seamus Coleman and John Joe Kenny, then they should have come out and made us aware of that, because then it wouldn't be a failure, because we would have known that Everton weren't after a right back anyway. But obviously Everton were, because, deadline day we were trying desperately to bring in Ainsley Maitland-Niles, who's a right back. We knew we were trying desperately for Denzel Dumfries, Max Aarons before that. So, as I've said, for me, but the right back situation is one that I think Marcel Brands has to take criticism for. He does, whether you like it or not, whether he likes it or not, he's got to take criticism for that. One thing I also would say is, again, other positions on the pitch. I don't necessarily think it's been a bad summer this summer. I said this yesterday. I don't necessarily think it's been a bad transfer window. Yes, we haven't addressed a key position that we needed to address. Granted, I understand that. But I think the other positions we've addressed and the other players we've brought in have been effectively fantastic. Take the right back situation out of this. For those, in the comments, and we will get in the comments in a moment, by the way, for those in the comments that are talking about Marcel Brands failing this summer and not having a good summer and he needs to go and this, that and the other, take the right back situation and park it for a second. Try and forget about it for a minute and look at the other signings we've brought in for the money that we've spent and the players we've gotten rid of this summer. Forget the position we haven't managed to strengthen in. Do you believe and this is a question I'm asking to everyone in the live comments. If you're watching the YouTube video, get your comments in. If you're enjoying, by the way, hit that like button. It only takes a second if you're new. Don't forget to subscribe. If you could share the stream, that would be fantastic as well. 48 people watching. If you could share the stream, that'd be great. Do you believe that for the money Everton have spent this summer, it's been a good summer? Because personally, for me, I think it's been a really good summer. We've brought in Damari Gray for $1.5 million, who at the moment looks like an absolute steal. Now, okay, he's got to do that consistently. I get that. He's got to continue to do that week in, week out. I understand all of that. But 2 goals in his last 2 Premier League games, 2 very good goals. He's causing threats. He's obviously, he's obviously worrying defences and opposition. So 1.5 million, excellent. Solomon Rondon, backup striker. Very similar to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, so we don't have to change the style or the system or the way in which we play. Premier League proven, averaging 1 goal in every 3 games for a backup striker, coming on a free. I think that's a good deal. And Josh Townsend coming in on a free. Last season was the most accurate crossing in the Premier League statistically. Works his absolute arse off, fast. Again, we've seen what a left foot he's got so far. So he scored the goal for Everton, getting involved in other goals. Getting about the pitch. Asmir Begovic, again, solid backup number 2. We knew we needed a backup number 2. Would we have rather have spent 8 million on Robin Olsen to sit on the bench all season when we haven't really got the 8 million to spend, or bring in Asmir Begovic, who's got much more Premier League experience than Robin Olsen and was coming in for a free? Again, and seems like a lovely fella. And then obviously, we've brought in Andy Lonergan, who, like I said, will probably never kick a ball for Everton, never put an Everton shirt on, never save, a shot for Everton. However, is, again, a good player to have in the changing room, I believe. And also, the players we've brought in seem to be really good people, really down-to-earth people. I was watching Andy Lonergan's interview, his first interview as an Everton player, and he was asked about the new signings and the goalkeepers. He asked about Jordan Pickford, and he said, Jordan's, this world class, absolutely. He was asked about Asmir Begovic, and he said, listen, I've only met Asmir Begovic a couple of times, and I've only worked with him for a couple of days, but he is genuinely one of the nicest fellas you will ever meet in your entire life. And again, I know people would say, Cam, but it's not always about bringing nice fellas in, but that's a big part of it. A big part of a transfer window is not only bringing quality in to improve your team, but it's about bringing players in that good eggs in the changing room. I've got good mentalities. We'll put an arm around players. Look at Andros Townsend with the penalty situation the other day. Went over to Richarlison, picked the ball off him and said, no, you're not the penalty taker, it's Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Showed his leadership. He's only been here a couple of weeks and he's over there doing that already. When did we see that? How many seasons have gone by where players have picked up the ball to take a penalty and there's been no leadership on the pitch? Nobody's gone over and said, hang on, no, you're not the penalty taker, mate, it's him. Lukaku in a semi-final of an FA Cup against Manchester United. Why isn't Leighton Baines taking these penalties? How many times did Kevin Morales took one off Baines at one point? Ross Barkley took one, all missed. But no, what we saw on last week was a bit of leadership. Andros Townsend, and okay, Alan went over and Seamus, and I get that, but Andros Townsend being at the club for a month, 2 months, going over and picking that ball up and saying, no, you're not the penalty taker, he's the penalty taker. Bit of leadership. Again, you look at Andros Townsend when he's doing his interviews at Everton, you can see how much he enjoys being here. You can see how proud he is to be here. He's talking about Everton like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm at this football club. And you might be sitting there saying, Cam, you're talking out your arse, mate. What difference does that make on how good of a footballer somebody is? Having a players with that mentality who feel lucky to be here, who feel honoured to be here, who feel like they are sort of sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm playing for Everton Football Club. Those are the players that are going to work their absolute bollocks off every single training session and in every single, in every single game. They're going to work their absolute arses off. A player coming down from a Champions League club or a club that are winning titles and going, yeah, I'll play for Everton because nobody else wants me, but I'm not really that arsed. Do you think they're going to give it 110%? Do you think they're going to give everything on the training field? Do you think they're going to give everything on the pitch? Because they see it as they're doing Everton a favour being at Everton. Andros Townsend and Damari Gray and Asmir Begovic and Solomon Rondon don't see themselves as they're doing Everton a favour. They see Everton as doing them a favour, giving them a chance to play in the Premier League, giving them a chance to show their quality in the Premier League. So they're going to give 110% every time they put an Everton shirt on to show and to repay that loyalty back and to repay that faith that the club have had in them back. And that's why it's important to bring in players like that. So for this summer transfer window, and you look at the outgoings, Bernard's gone, no massive issue with that. Again, Moise Keating's gone, didn't want to be here. I've seen a lot of people going, how can anyone say it's a good transfer window when we're swapping Moise Keating with Solomon Rondon? Moise Keating didn't want to be here and has never done anything of any note in an Everton shirt. Solomon Rondon has been here for a week and hasn't even stepped foot in USM Finch Farm yet and is putting videos on Twitter of himself smiling his head off in an Everton top, up the toffees, this, that and the other. He is told Venezuela, or I don't know how this conversation has gone, but he is not playing in the international break with Venezuela because he wants to get back and play for Everton. Is that not the mentality you want at the football club? Is that not... And is Moise Keane averaging 1 goal in every 3 games for Everton? No. Solomon Rondon averaged 1 goal in every 3 games for Newcastle. So it's not like we're just bringing in Dave off the street who loves the football club and can't wait to play. We're bringing in good footballers. They mightn't be technically as amazing as the footballers we've let out. Andros Townsend, I've said this before, mightn't be technically as amazing as, Bernard. But is he more suited to Everton? Is he going to work harder than Bernard? I'm not saying Bernard didn't work hard, but Andros Townsend's certainly more suited to Everton Football Club than Bernard is. So, for me, like I said, I think taking away the right-back situation, it's been a good transfer window. I do think that a lot of that is put down to Marcel Brands. Now, obviously, you look at Rafa Benitez and you think Solomon Rondon, Rafa Benitez. You think Andros Townsend, Rafa Benitez. But then it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's difficult to determine which players have been from Marcel Brands and which players have been from the manager. We know last season, James Rodriguez was all Carlo Ancelotti. Alan was all Carlo Ancelotti. Abdoulaye Doucouré, Marcel Brands. We know full well for a fact that Ben Godfrey was Marcel Brands because Carlo Ancelotti openly come out and said he'd never heard of Ben Godfrey and he'd never seen him kick a ball until his first training session at Everton. So we know that was Marcel Brands. So let's look at incomings since Marcel Brands' time at Everton Football Club, and we might miss a couple because I'm not going to go in depth and talk about every single incoming, and we will get into the live comments in a moment, by the way. So if you're watching live, please do get your comments in. If you're watching a YouTube video, get your comments down below and we will get involved with as many of them as possible as well. And if you're enjoying, hit the like button. It only takes a second. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Dan Boy says Decore is another one. He's so proud to be at the club and always gives it 110%. He's been like a different. And then Jason says Decore has been like a different player. He's playing like he did at Watford. Yeah, I agree. You're spot on. Decore is another one who's proud to be at the football club because it's the biggest club he's played for. So yeah. Anyway, incomings. So obviously in Marcel Brands' first season, and again I might miss a couple of players here, so bear with me if I do. We brought in Luca Dean, of course. We brought in Yerry Mina from Barcelona on deadline day. Andre Gomez on loan. We brought in Bernard, of course. We brought in Richarlison. Now Richarlison was very much, I think, a Marco Silva signing. The others, I think, were very much on Marcel Brands. I think we brought in Jonas Lersel as well to be a backup goalkeeper. But out of those 5 signings, Bernard never worked, but there was a potential that he could work because he was exciting, he was quick, he was technical, he could score goals. Never worked just because he wasn't obviously he wasn't physically fit enough for the Premier League or wasn't physically capable to keep up with the Premier League. Luca Dean has been amazing, absolutely amazing. One of the best left backs in world football. You know, again, last season he wasn't involved with goals, but seasons before, getting goals, assists all the time, ability to cross the ball into the box, he's been amazing. Richarlison, don't care what anybody says, people will have different opinions on this. Richarlison has been Everton's best player since he's been at the football club over that period of time. Maybe it wasn't last season, maybe it was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, etc., but for the time that Richarlison has been at Everton, he has been the best player at the football club for those years. Work rate, impeccable. Desire, impeccable. Might spit his dummy every now and then, might have a go every now and then, might be a bit immature every now and then, but he's a young lad, and you can't sit here and say that he doesn't give it 110% every time he's on the pitch. So Richarlison, impeccable signing. Andre Gomez coming on loan, and for the time that he was here on loan, done really, really well. Now obviously he was signed the next summer and hasn't been that great since. He had his injury, of course, which hindered them massively. And I get that. And then obviously he's come back, and to be fair, this season when he's played, he's done okay. But Andre Gomez, Yerry Mina, who took a year or so to settle in, but is now Everton's best centre back without a shadow of a doubt. So Yerry Mina has done a good job. You go into the next season. Obviously, we brought in. I'm trying to think of the seasons. Come back season to me. We had Alex Iwobi come in on deadline day, which was a big. Again, controversy of Marcel Brands, and Dan Boy says controversial. Iwobi will end up being a good signing. We'll talk about Iwobi in a second. Fabian Delph, who we'll talk about in a second as well. Moise Keane come in at that point as well. Jabril Sidibe coming on loan. Am I missing somebody else? Definitely. And Andre Gomez coming obviously on a permanent, as we said before. I'm probably missing somebody else in there as well. But out of those players that we brought in, let's talk about the 2 that I think caused the most controversy in Marcel Brands' time at Everton so far. Alex Iwobi and Fabian Delph. We'll talk about Fabian Delph first, because it's so easy in hindsight to sit here and say Fabian Delph has been an awful signing for Everton, and what was Marcel Brands ever thinking bringing Fabian Delph into the football club? I remember sitting here when Fabian Delph signed for Everton, and there's a video on this channel, by the way, if you ever wanted to go back and watch it, of the when I was on holiday in Mexico. I remember it like it was yesterday, on holiday in Mexico, and I'd done a little video talking about Fabian Delph signing for Everton. And I remember sitting here saying, not sitting here, literally, I was sitting in Cancun, but I remember sitting there saying, for £8 million, Gabaman obviously come in as well. Timothy says Gabaman come in that season as well, obviously just before Moise Keane, and has had a mixed time, obviously through injury. I'm not going to judge. I don't think you can judge Marcel Brands on Gabaman, because he's come in, he's had a torrid time with injury, and he's now only just starting to get to a point where we're seeing him on a bit more of a consistent basis. He cost a fair bit of money, but let's not have a go at Marcel Brands for that. Carl says you make me dizzy how much you change your opinions on players. I'm not changing opinions on any players, mate. Fabian Delph, and opinions change on players. That's football, mate. Fabian Delph, £8 million, and I remember sitting here saying, not a bad signing that. £8 million at the time, very little for Everton, because obviously we weren't as tight with financial fair play, and we had that money to spend. We were bringing in a player who was supposed to come in, as Basic says, and be a leader. a player who had Premier League experience, winning the Premier League, not just Premier League experience playing in it, winning the Premier League, winning countless amounts of trophies at Manchester City, FA Cups, Carabao Cups, everything, you name it, playing in the Champions League consistently, giving 110% when he was asked to play in an unnatural position, i.e. at left back. And we brought this fella in at a time in his career where you would expect him to get a good 2-3 years out of him for 8 million quid. I remember sitting here saying, that's a good signing. He'll bring leadership. He'll bring that winning mentality. He'll bring something to the dressing room that we currently haven't got at the football club that will hopefully turn this group of players into winners, because he is a winner. Now, in hindsight, looking back, the Fabian Delph signing has been dreadful, because he's come in, he's given nothing but shocking attitude. He hasn't been asked. He hasn't wanted to play for the club, and he is the epitome of the player that I mentioned before he's doing Everton a favour, so he doesn't have to work hard, he doesn't have to battle insane, and he doesn't have to give it 110%, because he's the player that's coming in from the championship, the champions winning team, and he's doing us a favour by coming in and bringing his leadership and this, that and the other. And maybe the Fabian Delph signing would have been avoided had maybe somebody had a conversation with him and maybe got to know him a little bit more. But maybe Fabian Delph blagged arse in conversation and said, yeah, I can't wait to be here, I'm going to give this, I'm going to give that, I'd love being here, big club, this, that and the other, and Everton fell for it. And then he's come in since then, and he's been a failure, let's be honest, because he's spent most of his time on the injury table, and he's played however many games he's played for Everton, he's maybe had 1 or 2 decent games, if that. The rest of the time he's spent slagging off fans, slagging off people at the club, this, that and the other. He's been a failure. But when we bought him for £8 million, I wasn't sitting here saying, oh my God, what are we doing bringing in Fabian Delph for £8 million? That's a shocking signing. Fair enough, maybe some people were, and that's fair enough. But I personally wasn't. I thought that was a decent signing at the time. I was wrong, but I thought that was a decent signing at the time. If you're enjoying, by the way, hit that like button, it only takes a second. Alex Iwobi, on the other hand, £30 million deadline day. Still a signing that a lot of people deem as a panic buy because we couldn't get Wilfried Zaha. I don't think Alex Iwobi was as much of a panic buy, because I don't necessarily think you can bring somebody in for £30 million in a deal worth that much money as a panic buy. I just don't. I just think that he was a player that was on the list for a while, and maybe Everton spent more money on him than what was first expected. And I've given a couple of different looks on this previously, in terms of maybe Farhad Moshiri desperately wanted Wilfried Zaha. Everton were priced out of the move for Wilfried Zaha, and then Marcel Brands was sort of told, just go and spend whatever you need to spend to get in Alex Iwobi, because we need somebody in today. And that's where Marcel Brands has spent that money on Alex Iwobi, because when you look at the Alex Iwobi signing, it's very un-Marcel Brands like. Marcel Brands doesn't usually spend that much money on players that, aren't really, aren't a guarantee to come in and do well. I mean, look at the money he spent over the years. He spent a lot of money. He has spent a lot of money. 18 million on Luka Dean was a steal. Okay, you'd have Richarlison, you'd had Alan, who obviously we know were players that the managers wanted to bring in. James Rodriguez was a free. Ben Godfrey was £20 million, but looks like an absolute steal at £20 million. Damari Gray, 1.5 million. So Alex Iwobi wasn't a Marcel Brands type of signing in regards to, he seemed like a Marcel Brands type of player, but he wasn't a Marcel Brands signing in regards to the money we spent on him. It always seemed a little bit strange that. Now, Alex Iwobi come in, and obviously the manager said he'd play him in a certain position and then changed the formation and didn't play him there. And it's been a bit of a rollercoaster time for Alex Iwobi at the football club. And is he worth the money that we spent on him at this current point in time? No. Does that mean he never will be worth that? Well, no, because Alex Iwobi might go on and have an absolutely amazing season. He's had an amazing start to the season. He's been brilliant at the start of the season. When he's come off the bench and when he started, he's had an impact in every game. He scored against Huddersfield. He's been brilliant in every game he's come off the bench in. So maybe Alex Iwobi will have a fantastic season this season, and somebody will bid 40 million for him next season, and therefore he is worth the money, isn't he? And again, I get that that's a bit of an extravagant outcome, but he isn't worth the money we spent on him at this moment. Doesn't mean he can't be. He's still very, very young, Alex Iwobi. What is he, 25, 26 years old, of age? Not old whatsoever. And, he's 25 years old, 25 in May. So, he's still got a lot of learning to do, and he's still got a lot of potential. And And I get that some people will still won't have it and will still sit here and say, no, you can't, he's a bad signing for the money that we spent. That's fair enough. But even if that is the case, let's say that's 2 bad signings in Marcel Brands' time at Everton. Moise Kean, you could say is a bad signing because he didn't come in and he hasn't had an impact on Everton. But obviously he's gone out on loan now, a loan for 2 years to Juventus. And whichever way you look at it, there's a buyout clause on him for for I think it's 25 million maybe, with 3 million add-on, which would mean that we get the money back for him. So Moise Kean might just be we tried, it didn't work, and we've sold him back, and we've cut our losses. We haven't, we've got back what we bought, what we paid, there or thereabouts, even a bit more considering the loan fee, and yet we write that one off. So Moise Kean, you could say, is a bad signing because he hasn't had the impact that he wanted at Everton. But again, we spoke about Moise Kean last week when we talked about him leaving Everton, and I said for me, when Moise Kean come into the football club, one player went that way and one player sort of stayed here, and Moise Kean stayed here, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin almost looked at the situation and thought, shit, if I want to be number 9 here, I've got to start improving, and he did, and he's now the number 9. Sidibe didn't work. We just spoke about right back situation. Into the next summer, obviously under Carlo Ancelotti, we brought in Abdoulaye Doucouré, Alan, James Rodriguez, Robin Olsen on loan, and Ben Godfrey. Ben Godfrey, exceptional signing, £20 million, looked amazing last season, absolutely amazing, and hopefully we'll see more of that. Abdoulaye Doucouré, brilliant. Alan so far, brilliant. James coming on a free. So, again, while he's played at Everton, he's been great, but seems to have that attitude that we were talking about before of, I'm doing Everton a favour so I can stroll into training when I want, I can go on holiday when I want, I can not play the games I don't want to play, and maybe he got that freedom under a certain other manager who had a very good relationship with him. He won't get that freedom under this manager. So, briefly, again, I've probably missed 1 or 2 players there, but they're the incomings of Marcel Brands' time at Everton Football Club. And I'm asking everyone now, whether you're watching live in the live comments, and we will get in the live comments in a second, by the way, I promise, or you're watching the YouTube video, out of the players that Marcel Brands has brought into the football club, there'll be a list on Twitter, social media, or whatever, or out of those I've just mentioned, please, if you'd be so kind, if you're watching live, do it now so we can get involved. Put those in a list of, just at this current time, players that you believe have succeeded at Everton or will succeed and failed at Everton out of all of the signings that Marcel Brands has made. Just succeeded, failed, not anything else, just those 2 areas. And let's try and compare where we all seem to think we are on PSG. On PSG, sorry, I've just read the comments on Marcel Brands. Outgoings then, as I said, Marcel Brands has managed to move on. Bernard this summer, who we brought in, but he's moved them on. And yes, again, wage-wise, Bernard, you would probably put in that list of failures because he was getting paid an awful lot of money. His outcome was very little. We didn't spend any money on him, to be fair. We didn't make any money on him, but his wage was massively. His wage was massive. Cal says, geez, Cam, that's like homework. His wage was massive. So, again, Bernard, probably in hindsight, not a waste of money, but again, a bad financial move. Cenk Tosun, obviously, he wasn't a Marcel Brands signing. I'm sure we'll move him on. Balassi's gone. He wasn't a Marcel Brands signing, of course. Moise Kean's gone, which, again, like I said, was a Marcel Brands signing. You could see that as a failure because he hasn't worked for Everton, or you could see it as, again, just sort of one that it hasn't worked. You write it off and you go again. It was a risk bringing in a player that young anyway. He didn't really live up to his potential for multiple different reasons, and I'm not blaming Moise Kean for that. There was a lot of different reasons for that in terms of, he come in at a time when there was a global pandemic and he couldn't settle, and this, that, and the other. So yeah. Obviously, there's been a number of players who've moved on over the years as well, since Marcel Brands has been here. Players that have run out of contract, young players. Benny Beningami's gone this summer. Various different players that were never going to get a chance in the first team and have since been moved on elsewhere. And we've made a lot of money back on those player wages and not much on transfer fees. But again, that's why I'm talking about, what's the other fella's name? Ronald Koeman and Steve Walsh putting us in a bad situation, because not only did they spend a ridiculous amount of money on bang average players, they spent a ridiculous amount of money on players that we're not going to get a penny back for, because most of them are going to walk out of Everton on a free, which is shocking when you're spending £300 million on players that you won't get a penny back for. You know, when you look at Balassi and Tossin and Walcott and this, that and the other, it's shocking. So, yeah, look, again, Outgoings do the same. Out of the players that have left Everton Football Club since Marcel Brands has been here, how many of those players are we deeply, annoyed with or frustrated that we haven't kept hold of? I don't know. Anyway, let's get into the live comments then. I do want to talk about contracts, and I do want to talk about academy as well, because they're some things that Marcel Brands has clearly had a positive impact on since being at the football club. We'll go from bottom to top in the comments, and then we'll get involved everywhere in the middle, because there's loads of comments. Big thanks to everybody for commenting as per usual. Really do appreciate it. If you're watching live and you're thinking, how do I get involved, there should be a little live comment section, and you can write a little live comment in there. You've got to be logged in to your YouTube account, but you should be able to just log in, get a comment in, and yeah, get involved in the chat. And if you're enjoying, hit the like button. It only takes a second, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Keith says, yes, I do watch Everton. Iwobi loses the ball, can't cross, can't shoot. The best Iwobi has played is under Rafa, and that's coming off the bench. He wasn't worth 30 million. Well, again, he says, I'm glad you're a fan of Iwobi, the defensive attacking player in your eyes. Well, look, Iwobi is, again, you've just admitted there, the best he's played is under Rafa. And, we've only had 3 Premier League games under Rafa Benitez, so let's wait and see how Alex Iwobi performs this season, because I think he's been great so far. But, as you said, it's only 2 or 3 games in the same way as let's see how Damari Gray performs this season, because I think he's been great so far, but we're only 2 or 3 games in. Danboy says, Keenan, if Keane was Juve scrap, why have they just bought him back? Keenan says, just shows how you can spend 20 odd million on a player from a club like Norwich and get a top player in Godfrey. Don't need to be taking these big European scrap players like Keane and Gomez. Well, Keane, like I said, Keane was a risk, and a risk that didn't work out for Everton, but almost did work out for Everton, because we made our money back on him. And typically in football, when you take a risk and you spend that much money on a young player and it doesn't work out, you don't usually get that money back, whereas Everton have. Yes, it's not in one lump sum right now, and it's over a couple of years, and it's a loan deal, and it's a obligation to buy and all of this nonsense, but whichever way you look at it, we will still get that money back. We're just looking for solutions as we are stuck. Any chance of getting 40 likes? Chat, if you could get 40 likes, nice one, basic. Really appreciate that, mate. John says we're stuck. Alex says success. Richarlison, Godfrey, Dean, Gray, Decore, Gabam, Sansa, Meenan, and Kunku, Branthwaite, and Ellis Sims as well. Well, Ellis Sims is more of an academy prospect, isn't he? But again, look at the names you've listed off there. Andre Gomez, like you said, Kieran, come in on loan and was great on loan, and yes, in hindsight, he hasn't been a great signing permanently, but he done well on loan. So John says Maitland-Niles is not a fullback, so what's the difference to a Iwobi? Kieran says success, Richarlison, Dean, Gray, Allen, Corey, and Godfrey, and Mina. Kieran Brands the GOAT. Is this actually Kieran Brands, or is this a Kieran Brands fan page? Lee says, I think he has made overall good signings, but we haven't made Europe or anything, so have we actually improved as a club? Well, that's a really good point, Lee. That's a really, really good point, because you're right there. For as much as we can sit here and say Marcel Brands has done a good job since he's been at Everton or not done a good job, the club on the foot, and this is all we cared about. We can talk about finance, we can talk about incomings, outgoings, we can talk about marketing, this, that and the other. Let's be honest, as Evertonians, all we give a shit about is what we're seeing on that pitch, and at the end of the season, where Everton are listed in those 20 Premier League teams. That's all we care about. We can sit here week in, week out and talk about the new stadium and players coming in and marketing and the new kits and this, that and the other, and are we happy with this and are we happy with that? All we're asked about is where we sit at the end of the season, and you're spot on there, Lee, mate. In the 3 seasons that Marcel Brands has been here so far, I think we finished 8th under Marco Silva, which wasn't a bad season by any means, but we didn't get European football. We finished 12th under Carlo Ancelotti, which a lot of that was down to Marco Silva failing at the first part of the season, and then Carlo, just trying to make up, the points, etc. And then we finished 10th last season. So 8th, 12th, and 10th is an average position of 10th, isn't it? Really, when you do maths, bit of maths. I think that's right. Probably not, but I think it's 10th. So an average position of 10th over 3 seasons isn't good enough. But is that all solely down to Marcel Brands? I don't think it is. Because you look at the managers, we've had 3 managers in that period of time. Well, 2 managers, and then obviously Rafa Benitez now. Duncan Ferguson as well in there. So, was the fact that Everton played horrific football last season under Carlo Ancelotti a fault of Marcel Brands? I don't think it was. Some would say, well, yeah, it is, because if we had better players, Carlo could play better football. But I don't think it was, because I think a lot of the times that we were playing horrific football at home to Sheffield United, Burnley, Fulham, we could have played much better football with the players we had at our disposal, but it was just the manager didn't want to do that for whatever reason. But I agree, I understand where you're coming from, I get where you're coming from. The club as a whole are failing at the moment. They're failing because Everton Football Club are massive, and Everton's goals and aims every year should be to finish in Europe and to fight for Europe. But is that solely on Marcel Brands? I don't think it is. Danboy says, yes, Keith, when we beat Chelsea with Duncan Charge, the first thing he said about in his post-interview was how impressed he was, with Iwobi defensively. Do you watch Everton? Keith says, winger with defensive work rate. Richie, well, Charleston, Townsend, now Iwobi. Fan page says Kieran wants the goal. Danboy says, including the PSG loan fee, we've made good money on Keane. A bit of an argument about defensive work right there. June says, Kyle John, very good prospect, deserves a chance. Short-term option, why not look at Boateng, who's just left Bayern Munich and play right back and centre back? Well, maybe he'd want too much money. And again, is he the type of player Everton should be looking at? Is Boateng going to come to Everton and go, right, okay, I'm going to work my ass off here, I'm going to battle, I want to show that I'm good enough to be in this Everton team? Or is he going to come in and go, I'm just going to pick up a wage, I'm not asked about being here, it's only Everton? 72 people watching. If you could get the likes up, it would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. If you could share the team as well, that would be perfect. John says, not all will work out, but need to find more gems and give shorter contacts. The contact is something I want to talk about in a second. Actually, does Iwobi have the physicality for fullback? No, he hasn't got the defensive ability for fullback because he's not a fullback. It's like saying, does Dominic Calvert-Lewin have the physicality for centre-back? Well, he does, but he's not got the defensive mindset because he's not a centre-back. So I don't want to see Iwobi playing fullback. Right wing-back, if we have to, maybe, but no. Alex says Iwobi has shown signs of improvements under Rafa and he might improve still. Danboy says Cenk was Machiri, thinking he had a clue about footy. Yeah. John says Iwobi is the most skillful player at the club, according to the players. Danboy says Brands has spent half of what Walsh did. Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Keith says panic buy. We had Sam as coach. Where are we? We had Sam as panic buy. We had Sam as coach. Sam even said that no other strikers available. He is the best out there. What's a panic buy? I don't know if you're talking about Cenk there. There you go. Machiri wanted to toss him because he scored 2 goals against Monaco when he was watching. He said that in an interview. And that's why Farhad Machiri shouldn't be allowed to make footballing decisions. In that one comment there is why Farhad Machiri should be nowhere near making footballing decisions. And we've had this conversation on a number of occasions before. We can all sit here and assume that Marcel Brands is making every footballing decision at the football club because he's the director of football, but we categorically do not know that that's the truth. We don't know that Marcel Brands is making every footballing decision at Everton. We don't know that Farhad Machiri isn't in his ear saying, I want you to do that, I want you to do this, I want you to do the other. You know, okay, you might want this player, but I want you to go and buy this player because he's dead shiny and he scored a couple of goals when I watched them. We don't know ultimately that Marcel Brands is the sole responsible, person at the club for making every footballing decision. Look at the manager situation, for example. Are we convinced that Marcel Brands, his number one choice was Rafa Benitez? I don't know. I think Farhad Machiri's number one choice was Rafa Benitez because he openly spoke about that. And look, Rafa's done a good job so far, and I've got nothing against Rafa Benitez so far, and I'm very much behind the Rafa Benitez train at Everton. But we all sat here in the summer and said Marcel Brands needs to lead this recruitment drive for a new manager. And he didn't. Ultimately, he didn't. Timothy says, the only issue I had with Delth signing is we paid more than what City paid for him when he was 25. We paid more for him at 29. Cast-off purchases from top 6 clubs have been an issue. Yes, I agree. And that's why we're seeing less of them now. But I would agree. The Turkish Harry Kane says basic there about apparently Machiri said that Cenk Tosun was the Turkish Harry Kane, which is interesting. Mad. Alex says, I understand why he was brought in, but he isn't good enough. He brought Delph into the club, but he did some scouting. He'd know how crap he is. Why isn't he getting a work payment for Luke Klutz? Well, again, I don't know whose responsibility is for work payments. Again, I don't think it's Marcel Brands' responsibility for work payments on players. I think that's down to the Premier League or the FA. Again, I'm not going to put that on Marcel Brands. Zelda Babe says, I'm not sure, Cam, which players did he bring in? Does the buck stop with him? Does he have the final say, or is he just an advisor? That's it. As a director of football, you would hope he has the final say, but is a director of football just a title that he's been given to make it look like he has the final say? Who knows? That's a big part of this discussion, I suppose, isn't it? Andrew says, ICANN must be difficult for Brands because himself and managers are going to have different players who they want. Yeah. Jason says, ICANN must admit I don't really know much about him. Lee says, face value, no, although we don't have all the details of his role. We expected he would be bringing in youth for the future, and after 3 years, we should be seeing them now. We aren't. Yes, and Ned, what's happening, Ned? He says, I haven't got a clue what his job role is, but what I do know is we have a director of football who doesn't direct the club's football. If you sit back and look, 4 years he's had to sign a right back. Yeah, exactly. I would agree. He doesn't direct the club's football, but is that down to him failing because he's not doing his job properly, or is that down to somebody else at the football club or other people at the football club not allowing him to direct the football? Look, we don't know, do we? We don't know, and I suppose, like I said, that's something that we should know, but we don't. What I think we need from Marcel Brands now is a breakdown of the summer. We need them to sit down in front of a camera, you know, whether it be through Everton's media, whether it be through Toffee TV, whether it be through the Mighty Blues, anywhere, just sit down in front of a camera and tell us about why this summer has gone, how it's gone, why have we only spent £1.5 million? You know, there's a big, you know, there's something he could talk about, a pandemic. He could sit there and say, hang on, there's just been a global pandemic. We've had no fans in stadiums for a year. We haven't got the ability to just go out and spend all of this money. Plus, we were tight with FFP constraints, so we didn't have that money to go and spend. Perfect reason for him to say, you know, why we haven't spent that much money. But as I've said, we don't seem to get that communication. And this is another thing that I think Evertonians are mixed with in their opinions. I've seen some Evertonians saying the club don't need to communicate. Why does Marcel Brands need to communicate with fans? Personally, for me, I think Marcel Brands does need to communicate with fans. I think he needs to sit down and tell us about the summer, why it went the way it was, why we didn't spend as much money as we wanted to, why we failed to bring in a right back, why, you know, again, the Moise Keane situation. You know, Marcel Brands could come out and say, listen, it's simple, Moise Keane didn't want to be at Everton, so we moved him on. And I don't think any Evertonian could have an issue with that. But it's that lack of communication, it's that lack of, you know, like I said, you know, of that frustrates Evertonians, because we don't hear from Marcel Brands. He's almost like the hidden entity, isn't he? Wears nice tight shirts and nice tight pants, but we don't hear from him. What's his role? What's he doing? What's he not doing? You know, is it his role to have the final say on players, or do other people have the final say on players? You know, again, it's all of these different questions that we don't know the answer to, and when there's uncertainty and when there's doubt, there's speculation, and when there's speculation, there's often stories that are made up that aren't the truth. And to get rid of all this speculation and all this doubt and all this uncertainty, Marcel himself could sit down with the club and do a 5-minute video like Aston Villa's director of football has done, like Brighton's director of football has done before, like various Premier League clubs have done over the last couple of weeks. Sit down and talk to us as fans about the summer. Does he think it's a good summer? Does he think we could have done better? Why we didn't spend as much money? Why we didn't sign a right back? The communication between the football club and the fans is nothing short of embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing, especially when you look at what other football clubs in the Premier League are doing. There's no excuses to why Everton shouldn't be doing that. No one's saying, come out and say, we wanted Ainsley Maitland-Niles, but Arteta's a fucking bad idiot, and that's why we didn't sign him. Nobody's saying come out and, you know, give anything away like that, or give any names away, or name any players, or break any confidentiality rules. Obviously not. But there's ways to do things, as other clubs have shown. You can come out and you can explain to us this summer transfer window and why it went the way it did, and why we didn't sign a right back, and why we only spent this amount of money in this, that, and the other. Put fans at ease, come out and talk to us, so we all sit there and go, that's what's going on, or that's why that was the case, or that's what happened, so that's the reason for it. But we just doesn't seem, you know, we just don't seem to be getting any of that from the club, which is disappointing. It is. It's really, really disappointing, because ultimately, for me, that's a necessity now. That is a necessity at the moment. Dosbig says Boateng has already signed for Lyon, but he's injury prone. He hasn't played right back for like 10 years. I don't think he'd be a good right back anymore. There you go. Lee says West Ham, Leicester, Villa all showing improvement, but arguably that is down to the managers rather than director of football, so can't blame Brands too much unless he picks the gaffers. Here you go. Blue Peter says the list of players Brands has had to find buyers for and move them on, a big part of his job. Spot on. John says if Machete is a consultant, then nobody can do their job properly. Jimmy says, yeah, that should be a big part of his position, is to sell players we don't want. It is. Basically says, this is the area of communication the club should catch up. Yeah, the area of communication, sorry, not the area. Yeah, absolutely. John says, Marcel can come out and tell the truth if it's Macheri is the problem. Can't come out and tell the truth. He also says, right, Cam, they need to benchmark themselves against other clubs. Yeah, and Jimmy says absolutely right about the lack of communication. Who knows? Perhaps they want to keep it secret, the key to mid-table mediocrity. Yeah, well, look, again, the communication is something that's got on my bosoms for a while, because I just don't think it takes much for Marcel Brands to take 5 minutes out of his day to sit in front of a camera and talk to us as fans, let us know what's going on, why things are going the way they are, is things going the way he wanted them to go, are things going in the right direction. Just talk to us. It only takes a second. Blue says, we've had a very poor and bloated squad when he came in. It all takes time. It does, but he is 3 years into his time at Everton, so how much time does it take? Let's talk about contracts then. Wages, lengths of contracts, because I think that's a really important thing to talk about when we're talking about Marcel Brands as well. One thing we have evidently seen, and I don't think anybody can, disagree with this, is that the contracts for players coming in, new signings and players signing contract extensions, has improved drastically since Marcel Brands has come in. We're now past that era of seeing Everton given, 5 year contracts to players. That just why we're giving 4 or 5 year contracts to those players when evidently, they're either not good enough or they're probably not going to be here. Why are we giving 6 year contracts to 28-year-olds? Why are we giving 4 year contracts to 29-year-olds? We've gone past that era now. Very, very rarely will you see an Everton player now sign more than a 3 year contract. Even the younger players coming in signing more than a 3 year contract. James Rodriguez, 2 years with an option for a third if it works out. Now, we all sat there 4 games into last season and said, 4 games into last season and said, James will definitely sign that third extension, that 3rd year. Why don't we get him signed now? Why isn't he signing the extra contract now? Get it signed now. We're now fast forward a year's time, sitting here saying he mightn't even be here come the end of this month. It depending if he goes to Turkey or not, as we talked about the other day, he certainly isn't going to be here next season. He'll go in the summer. So, the contract situation for me has improved drastically since we've been at Everton. Have some bad decisions been made with contracts? Maybe, but it's improved drastically. We're now not giving players 4 or 5 year contracts. Rondon, we haven't signed Rondon and given him a 5 year contract. We're giving him a contract till the end of the season. Again, Andy Lonergan contract until the end of the season. Damari Gray, couple of years. Andros Townsend, few years. We're not signing these players to heavy contracts for heavy money. We're signing these players to contracts where if it doesn't work out in a year or 2 years time, they're near enough moving on anyway. And that for me is a big plus point of Marcel Brands and Marcel Brands' job at the football club. A big plus point of that is that, ultimately we're not just throwing years and years and years at players. We're not just, guaranteeing players 100k a week for 3-4 years on the bounce. Because ultimately that is what is putting us in this situation over the years. That's what, Steve Walsh done, and Ronald Koeman done, giving players that are 27, 28 years old long contracts, and then Everton ultimately struggling to get rid of them, and those players seeing down those contracts, not only getting a wage every week, but then obviously leaving the club for a free at the end of it. So contracts, I think, is one thing that Marcel Brands has improved at the football club. Rondon is 2+1. Yeah. I meant Andy Lonergan. I got confused with the contracts. Rondon is 2+1. But yeah, contracts improved. Not 4 year, not even 3 year deals, 2 year deals with an option to extend for a further year. So not even 3 year deals. Definitely not 4 or 5 year deals. You're not seeing any of them anymore. Contract extension, Seamus Coleman, an extra year. Not an extra 5 years, an extra year. So, again, I think that's something that Marcel Brands has improved at the football club, is the contract situation. Not just throwing contracts at players for 4 or 5 years. Actually, there being a little bit of thought process in it, and even the best players at the football club only getting minimal contracts, and then if they impress, they'll get an extra contract. If they don't, they'll be able to move on. Like the James situation, £190,000 a week for James Rodriguez, come in for free. Imagine we'd have given him a 5 year contract last summer, just because it was dead great that we were signing him, and oh my god, let's give him a 5-year contract. We'd have all been sitting here now going, well, nobody can afford to sign him, and he's going to be at Everton for the next 4 years, hardly playing, hardly, again, being in the team, and he's going to get paid at 190k a week. How much money is that wasted in wages? Whereas now we're sitting here saying, well, okay, even if he doesn't go this summer, even if he doesn't have a massive impact this season, he'll be going for free at the end of the season if he doesn't want to be here anyway. So for me, contract situations have improved massively since since Marcel Brands has been at the football club. And then the academy has improved. Whether we like it or not, whether it's whether we talk about it much or not, the academy has improved since Marcel Brands has been at Everton. And by that, what I mean is, we're now not seeing 24, 25, 26-year-old players playing in the under-23s. We're seeing 17, 18, 19-year-old players playing in the under-23s. And Marcel Brands is spoken about that before. He's spoken about how we needed to sort out the academy ASAP, because it was getting to a point where you're seeing Umar Niasse playing academy football. Everton's academy used to be players that weren't good enough to get in the first team, got in the academy. Played in the academy. It wasn't an under-23s. It was like a reserve team. So if you weren't good enough, no matter what age you were, you'd just play academy football. You'd just play in the under-23s. Niasse playing in there. Obviously, we had Matty Pennington, who was 25, 26, playing in there. Now, we've moved all of those players on. If you're beyond a certain age and you're not good enough, you get moved on. You either get loaned out or you get sold if we can sell you. And it's the 17, 18, 19-year-old lads that are getting the chance in the under-23s to blossom and to for that pathway to become available. And that's improved since Marcel Brands has been at the football club. It has. Can it improve more so? Obviously it can, because as somebody said earlier in the comments, Marcel Brands has been here for 3 years now, and we haven't seen one academy graduate come through into the first team. Okay, maybe Anthony Gordon, but certainly not breakthrough and be involved week in, week out. So that can certainly improve, but it's improved an awful lot. You won't go and watch an under-23s game now and see a 25, 26-year-old in the side. Obviously, I think the eldest one was Nathan Broader, the 23, and he's obviously been loaned out to Sunderland with an option to buy. So that's improved as well. And yeah, look, as I said before, it's the big question. It is the big question. Has Marcel Brands done a good job Is Marcel Brands doing a good job at Everton? Again, there'll be a lot of people that say no. There'll be a lot of people that say yeah. I'm really interested to find out this one. If you're enjoying, please do hit that like button. We are going to finish up in a minute, but we'll get in the comments before we do that. But I'm interested to find out. Like I said, he's failed to bring in a right back, not just this summer, but over the years. Players we've brought into the football club, I think there's been more positives than there have negatives. Players he's moved out the football club, I think he's still got a lot of work to do, but he's slowly but surely getting through them. And I'm not as big as fan Marcel Brands. I think he should have done better in the time that he's been here, and I think we expected him to do better in the time that he's been here. But there was a lot of things for Marcel Brands to work on: the contracts, the academy, getting rid of the players that are here on big wages that obviously have got no future here. But there was also a lot of things that he needed to do, i.e. bringing a right back, that he's failed to do. And as I said, does the buck stop with Marcel Brands? Does Marcel Brands have the final say at Everton? Is Marcel Brands the one that decides, how much we pay for the players? The players we bring in, the manager we bring in, or is somebody else in the background, saying, yeah, you might think that, but I want to do this instead. And ultimately, this summer, has Marcel Brands, other than right back, done a good job? We've brought in 5 players for £1.5 million, and we've improved the squad. So, there you go. Let's get in the comments before we finish up then. Jack the Lad says, yeah, I heard about that, about Moyes. Daniel says, FFB and getting rid of God, awful players isn't an easy task. He's brought in good players and we need to sell, but no one's looking and Delph and thinking for sign him up. Yeah, Alex Roberts says, Michael Keane, 28 years old, 5-year contract. Yeah, the Michael Keane one is one that I don't agree with personally, or don't particularly like. So yeah, I think it's a 3-year deal, isn't it? Everton Blue says Moyes Keane will return to Everton. He won't. John says we should buy 1 or 2 top players a year, I think, Sig. But if we haven't got the money to, then we haven't got the money to, is it? John says, until we all know the circumstances behind the scenes, we can't judge him. Need to have a better replacement ready first, or we could throw the baby out the bathwater. Well, yeah, we need some communication from the club first for the start. Sean says, Brands arrived because he had knowledge of the South American market. Look at all the budding Pelés, Maradonas, etc. we have in our academy breaking into the first team. I think that might be a bit of sarcasm there, mate. Celtivate says, you can see Rafa has control on the pitch, getting the best from the players, showing fight and leadership that we haven't seen in a long time. Pity I can't really say the same about the business side. DJ says, no, he is an absolute joke. Why do we need a director of football? Just give the manager complete control. It worked under Moyes and it's working again for him at West Ham. Well, you know, again, look, maybe the new model of football is director of football, isn't it? But interesting. Top players demand a long contract, says John. Lee says, I don't think Keane would want to leave if he was playing every game, so you can't have Brands coming out and saying we got rid of him on loan because he doesn't want to be here. I just don't think he wants to be here. And is Moise Keane better than Dominic Calvert-Lewin? I don't think he is, so he shouldn't be playing every game. And we don't play with a formation that allows 2 strikers. And even if we did, is Richarlison a better striking option than Moise Keane? I think he is. So, again, there you go. Machedi makes the final decision and Brands just advises, says Alex. Well, if that's the case, he shouldn't. Because as we've seen in the comment before, Machedi likened Cenk Tosun to Harry Kane, which is baffling. Jake says, late to the team camp, but I hope you're well. Is the FIFA 30 still going on Toffee TV? Thank you very much, Jake. I'm not doing too bad. We will be starting FIFA back up again when the new FIFA comes out at the start of next month. No point in carrying on a career mode when the new FIFA comes out soon. So when the new FIFA comes out, I believe me and Ned will be starting a new career mode. Jack the Lad says, look on Google, Romano has mentioned Moyes returning. Well, he's on a 2-year loan with an obligation under certain circumstances. So there is a slight potential that he could return, but I don't think he will. Hopefully we get a right back in January. Let's hope so, mate. Let's hope so. John says, Rafa put the skids under the Dumfries deal. Well, there's rumours that he wasn't too convinced with him defensively for the money that we'd pay for him, so wait and see. And Basic says, we're not going to see any South American players because work permits are now a nightmare. Nice work, boss. Yeah, the Brexit rules have shivved us really with that, haven't they? But anyway, look, we're going to finish it up there. Then if you have enjoyed this live stream, please do leave a like. Let us know your thoughts. I was just trying to give all sides of the story. Talk about contacts, talk about incomings, outgoings, academy and stuff like that. Do you think Marcel Brands is doing a good job at Everton? Personally, for me, I think he could be doing better. I don't think he's doing as bad as some people seem to think he is, but I think there's definitely room for improvement. And I think the right back situation is one that he's sort of dug himself a grave for, really. If he'd have sorted 2 years ago, then there wouldn't be as much, I think, criticism about him, whereas it's a big reason to have a go at Marcel Brands, isn't it? And rightly so, which should have been sorted. But let us know your thoughts in the comment section. If you have enjoyed this stream, please do hit that like button. It only takes a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow with another live stream, so look out for that one as well. Really do appreciate it. Yeah, like I said, leave a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. Massive thanks to everybody in the live comments. Sorry we couldn't get involved in all of the live comments, but I really do appreciate everybody getting involved. Geordie still out says Celtic. I would agree, mate. I would agree. But I really appreciate everybody getting involved. And if you're watching this YouTube video, get your thoughts in the comments down below, and we'll get involved with as many of them as possible. Jimmy Mack says, yeah, you done well, Cam. A true Evertonian. Thank you very much, my mate. Really appreciate it. Big thanks for watching, everybody. Massive thanks for everybody for watching live. Really do appreciate it. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues. Cheers for watching. See you after.